All right, we're looking at a problem from 2014, the first one. This is kind of a rare question where I'd say like the part A is quite a bit more challenging than the part B. So in part A, you have to scramble a word according to some rules that they have here. The scrambling process goes across the word from left to right, so it sounds like a typical loop that traverses a string. Um, if there's two consecutive letters where you have an A followed by a non-A, then you need to swap them. Anytime we're talking about consecutive in a loop structure, we got to be very, very careful that we don't go out of bounds. Okay, so one of our big concerns here will be potentially going out of bounds, because anytime you start looking to the right or to the left of something within a storage system that's indexed, you might go too far on either of the edges, so like the far left or the far right. Um, and then once the letters have been swapped, we don't want to revisit them. So we have to sort of alter how we step through the loop then in that case, because typically a loop's just going to go like one letter at a time or perhaps two letters at a time. Neither of those would be sufficient here, because sometimes we want to go one letter. That's when we wouldn't scramble. And sometimes we want to go two letters. That's when we do scramble. That would work really nicely with the while loop. I'm going to go ahead and write for loops, since I think most of you just always write for loops. But if you're confident in your code writing, I really think a while loop's better here because it gives you more control of your step expression. And then they give us some examples, and we'll kind of verify all of those. And sometimes you won't do any scrambling because there won't be an A followed by a non-A. Okay, so I'm going to show you actually two different solutions here to this problem. In the first one, I'm going to build a string throughout the process, right? We're given a string and we're returning a string. So I'm going to build the scrambled string from scratch, as opposed to working with the existing string that was handed to me as a parameter. All right, and so I just wrote a standard loop then that goes all the way across the string. This is important if you're building the string from scratch, because you have to give every letter in the string a chance to enter the return string. Even though it takes two letters to scramble, we're going to have to visit the last letter if we're building the string from scratch, because we have to give that last letter a chance to enter our string. So if you wrote your solution already, you might want to verify, like on all of the cases, that you are getting the last letter of the string. That'd be an easy thing to miss if you weren't careful in your answer. Okay, so I went ahead and just grabbed a letter from the string, and now one of two things is going to happen. I'm either just going to put that letter into the string like normal, okay, so no big deal, or potentially I'm going to swap this letter with the letter that comes after it. Okay, so one way or another, this string called first is going to make it into my build string. But potentially I'm going to take the letter that comes after it and actually put it in front of this letter. And so that's like the determination that I'm making here. Okay, do I want to take that next letter and swap it? Well, there's a few things that would have to happen. First of all, for that to happen, this first letter would have to be an A, okay? And the letter that comes immediately after it would have to be a not A, all right? Now, I don't really have to put this here. But I had to put it somewhere prior to second taking place. So it could have gone, into that code a little bit lower. But at some point before I took that second substring, I had to consider whether or not that I was going to be in bounds. So my thinking was this: if I'm at the very last letter of the string, for example, like the A in abracadabra, even though that's an A, there's no reason to consider swapping it with the next letter, because there is no next letter, right? So if you're at the last index of the string, why would you want to consider swapping with the next letter? There is no next letter. And if you did consider a swap, very likely you'd go out of bounds. Okay, so to prevent myself from going out of bounds is why I put that extra protection there. All right, now if it was a swap situation, I want to bring that second letter in prior to bringing the first letter in. And then I'm also going to put in one extra increment of I in addition to what the for loop is already doing. And that's because I want to advance 2 indexes in the swap case so that I don't revisit either of these 2 letters. Since I'm putting 2 letters into my build string, I want to enter word 2 indexes to the right of where I began. Under most circumstances, when I'm not swapping, I'll only want to advance 1 index, and I'll just put 1 letter into the string. But in cases where I'm putting 2 letters in, I want to advance 2 indexes. Okay, so that code works. I tested it out earlier. Okay, and then I'm showing a second solution here as well. This one takes less code, but might be a little bit more tedious to write. I don't know. I mean, I guess it's up to you. So in this one, I didn't make a copy of the string. So there is no copy. There is no build from scratch. I'm just going to shuffle letters around in the actual string. And every time I do that, I'm going to preserve every letter of the string. This is advantageous for a few reasons. We'll never have to really worry about missing like something from the front or from the very back. So I'm never going to chop any letters off of this string. At every iteration of the loop, I'm going to preserve every letter. If there's 20 letters, I'll have 20 letters at all times. If there's only 3, then I'll only have 3. Now in this problem, so again, there's no string prior to this loop, except the one that I'm handed. My control expression I changed around. Okay, so this time I only want to consider even running this block of code as long as I have 2 letters available to me. Okay, when I get to a point when there's only 1 letter left and there's no more swaps to consider, I'll shut it down. I couldn't do that in my previous solution because of how I was building that string from scratch. I had to give every letter a chance to enter that build string. But here I'm not building anything from scratch, so it's not as big of a deal. All right, so because of how that control is written, I know that I'm safe with both of these substrings that I'm doing. Okay, I can get the letter that I'm at and the one after it. I can ask if I have an A followed by a non-A, and if that happens, then here's the swap. Okay, so that's the key right there. I've swapped second and first. What you see to the left and to the right of that is all of the remaining letters of words. So everything up to the swap and everything after the swap. And that way we're just holding on to every single letter at all times, at all steps of this process. But I did have to put in that one extra I++, just like before, because in this case, when I do this, I don't want to revisit those 2 letters. So I'm forcing the loop to take 1 extra step so that I go a 2-letter advance instead of a 1-letter advance. And then when I'm done, I'll just return word. That's the same word variable that was handed to me as an argument, and I've just been shuffling it throughout, and that's fine. We don't have to worry about like destroying the string or anything. It doesn't matter. You're just given a copy of it anyway. All right, so that's part A. Part B, like I said, part B is probably easier. Part B is just a typical remove method. There is a chance that these words don't get scrambled, right? Like if you look at some of the examples, like whoa and eggs are the same at the end as they were when they started. So in part B, if we encounter any of those words, we remove them. Otherwise, we replace them with their scrambled version. So there's 2 things going on here. There's a potential for a remove, and there's a potential for a replace. Okay, so when we replace in an array list, this is crucial that we remember this. This could be question 1 on our AP exam. We need to call on the set method. Remember, you can't use the equal sign. You can't assign your way into an array list. So you have to rely on the set method. And if we want to remove, then we got to call the remove method. And anytime we remove from an array list, we have to think about how our loop's going to be structured. Are we going to go backwards? Are we going to put a corrective step in? Are we going to write a while loop where we take control of the step process? And then this is another problem where it says, you have to call your method in part A. So if you start recreating the scramble method, then you're missing the point of this problem. So we have to call from part A the method with its signature, which was, where was it? Scramble word. So we're going to hand it a string from the list. We're going to ask if it's scrambled. Now, the way that we'll ask if it was scrambled, if it returns the original word, then it wasn't scrambled. Okay, and then it's going to be removed. Otherwise, we'll replace it. Another thing I wanted to point out, in this question, the second sentence, you will implement two related methods. Sometimes we see them say unrelated methods. When they say related methods, you can probably count on the fact that you're going to have to call one of the earlier methods in one of the later methods. And so that's exactly what's happening here. All right, so the very first thing that I would do is I would set up a loop, and I'm going to call scramble word as like my first step. Okay, so I don't recommend an enhanced loop here, right? We don't want to remove with an enhanced loop. Personally, I like to write a for loop that runs backwards. Okay, to me that's just the easiest, but I've shown you other ways you can do it. Okay, so we'll work backwards from right to left. Make sure you include the 0 index, okay, because it might get removed. Now, that method that we wrote in part A hands us a string, okay, and we have to give it a string. So from the word list, we're going to get string I, okay, and that's the first word in the word list, or the last, I guess, depending on how we enter the loop. Now, if this word, SCR, I was thinking like short for scrambled, equals, okay, that word that we just got from the word list, well, then that's a problem, okay? The reason that's a problem, I mean, I don't know if I should say problem, but the thing is if that happens, we need to remove it, okay? So if that happens, we need to remove it. So we're going to say word list, we're going to use the remove method of array list to take that out. Otherwise, okay, so if we don't remove it, that means that it was scrambled, and we need to replace it, okay? And that's the set method. Remember, set is replace. So we're going to set index I to the scrambled version of itself. This is a void method. We're not returning anything, okay? We're writing this code in the same class. The directions said that. Two related methods in the same class. So when you're writing code in the same class, you can locally call that first method without anything in front of it. All you have to do is hand that method a string, and it will hand you back a string, okay? So you hand it a string, it'll hand you back one. All right, and again, as long as you're comfortable with your array list code, I think this is a pretty easy question. So words that were scrambled state. So remember from part A, whoa, eggs did not scramble. So notice that they got removed. Dog and fish did not get scrambled either. I threw dog and cat in there, okay? And then, so dog and fish did not scramble, and they both got removed, okay? All right. Hopefully you're comfortable with the remove method there, and maybe you could even write various loop approaches. And like I said, just absolutely cannot do like an equals here. I still see people trying to write like equals sometimes, okay? Hope you like my new background.